Hey everybody, welcome to week 13. We have a couple of readings from chapter 7 of our text, Writing About Writing. So let's take a look here at Canvas and see what we have. So I've chosen to read from Wardle herself. She's the co-editor of our textbook, and she has an article called Identity, Authority, and Learning to Write in New Workplaces. And this is a picture of her, as well as a little blurb about her, where she's working now. She was at one time at University of Dayton. Now she is entrenched in the fantastic English department at Miami University. They do some really great work there, and they have produced some incredible rhetoric and composition scholars. So this is a pretty good read. The one thing that I want you to think about when you're reading Wardle is to think about how identity and authority play a central role in individuals' abilities to join a new workplace or a new situation. Sometimes new members of a community have to be willing to learn the appropriate ways to write in, and for the community, they're hoping to join. And with this example of Alan working in the humanities department and how he kind of refuses to conform to some of the norms as far as writing is concerned and as far as communication is concerned, we see through that example that there can sometimes be a struggle for new members trying to join a community. So in order for new members to be successful, they need to be willing to negotiate those communication strategies. They need to conform every once in a while and not do things their own way. Because as we know, within discourse communities, there are certain sets of expectations that new members are expected to conform to and to learn the ins and outs of being a part of the community, of being a community member. So that is Wardle. The second one, go back to my sharing button. The second one is much shorter reading by Klass. And this will pop up in a moment. Klass is a doctor, but also is a writer. And she writes this piece as a much shorter piece, but she writes this piece explaining how she kind of learned the ins and outs of communication within an emergency department and as a medical student. So this is a short and very, very accessible reading that I think many of you will relate to. I know that many of you are nursing students or involved in health sciences. So if you haven't started your practicals yet, or if you have a job that's maybe related to medicine in some way, you probably are familiar with the different kinds of lexis that the medical community uses. So the thing I want you to take away from this reading is that there are particular communities, for example, in this case, doctors working in a hospital, particular communities develop specialized language in order to get things done. For the medical community, sometimes it's shorthand, sometimes it's coded language, so patients aren't aware of the communication that is going on, unless the patient happens to be someone who has worked within the health field and is a little bit familiar with lingo. For example, I worked as a labor assistant and a doula with midwives in a hospital. So I'm a little bit more familiar with medical language than the typical patient. So I can sometimes be a pain in the butt because I know certain things that are going on and I ask a lot of questions. And not everybody enjoys a patient like that. So again, with that specialized language, those are they construct identities of the people who use that specialized language and also construct relationships with the people who hear it. So again, in the medical community, there might be a little bit more distance between the caretaker or the care provider and the patient, because there's a necessity there, right? You can't get too close because of certain things, right? And then the last thing I want you to remember for this reading is that moving from outsider to insider status in a particular discourse community means losing or perhaps shifting some of your former identities, right? And I think we all have experienced that to some respect. As people involved in higher education, right? I was a student and now I'm on the other side as an instructor. And so, for me as a newer instructor, I'm navigating and kind of shifting my identity as a person in higher education. And of course, you as students are learning to navigate the waters of the academic discourse community, that there are certain conventions, certain specialized language, and certain expectations, right? So these are things that I want you to start thinking about as you explore your own chosen discourse community. Yeah, so let's go back to sharing the Canvas page. And take a look at what's expected for week 13. So obviously you're watching this overview. Make sure that you read these selections. Again, Wardle is a little bit longer. Klass is shorter, and it's kind of along the lines of the Mirabelli piece, taking a specific community and taking a look at the ways in which that community communicates. But Wardle is now looking more at workplaces and how people navigate and establish identity and authority in new workplaces. So this week, I want you to keep on collecting and analyzing your data. If you're going to interview somebody, get that stuff done, make your observations, collect your genres for your chosen discourse community. I want you to be really solid this week on what your discourse community is, who you're going to observe, and if you plan to interview somebody, make sure that is established and that you have that information ready. So we have a discussion board assignment, newcomers and modes of belonging, which is due on Sunday the 10th. And then we have discourse community rough draft number 1. I don't want you to panic. This is not a full-fledged rough draft, but this is due on Sunday the 10th as well, and I will talk about that in a moment. So with the discussion board, this is drawing off of the Wardle article, and it's question taken right from the text. I just figured this was an interesting question, and hopefully you agree and that you can write a little bit about it. So the question is, drawing on Wardle, what are the 3 ways that newcomers try to belong in a new community? Give it specific examples to illustrate each quote unquote mode of belonging, and then consider why a newcomer might choose not to participate in some aspect of the new community. Again, we see that example of Alan choosing not to participate in some of those aspects. And lastly, the question here asks, have you yourself experienced any of those modes of belonging when entering a new community? Your initial response is due Sunday. You'll get 6 points for that. And then responding to 2 peers, 4 points total, is due on Thursday, April 14th. So that is a total of 10 points, and a pretty easy 10 points too. And then here is the assignment page for the discourse communities rough draft number 1. So as I said, it's not going to be a full-fledged rough draft. It's not going to be full 8 to 10 pages. You can do that if you want to get it out of the way and get most of your thoughts down. You're more than welcome to, but it's not required for this first rough draft. What I want to see is your preliminary work with the following. So a title, it could still be your working title that you have from your research proposal. I want you to focus on drafting your introduction paragraph. I want you to think really hard about it. I know for some people, they save the introduction until the last after they've written, but at least try to get some kind of an introduction down with your thesis that will be revised from the working thesis that you have in your research proposal. So I do want that revised. I will be providing commentary and feedback for your theses. So please be sure that you have revised it. You're starting to hone in on what it is you really want to argue in this paper. And then I want to see some kind of an outline or a plan of attack for your paper. It could be a paragraph just stating how you plan to organize your thoughts, or if you're like me and you like an alphanumeric outline, you can go ahead and do that. Just to get some kind of idea of organization. And then for data collection or analysis, provide some notes or transcripts with some commentary, or you could provide a more formal in-depth start of your analysis. It really depends on what stage you are in as far as your observations and if you've done any interviewing or collection of data that way. But I want you to show me at least something that you're making progress in this project. So I just want to make sure that you're not leaving this very long project until the very end of the semester when you have lots of work due for other classes and you're preparing for exams and that kind of thing. I just want to make sure that there is some forward momentum and progress towards the end goal. So the minimum length for this should be 2 to 3 pages, right? If you figure about half to 1 page for your introduction, which will include your thesis, then, a page or so of an outline, and then any kind of data collection or analysis. It can be longer than that. If you go over, that's fine. But just give me something, right? There is no peer review for this assignment. There's no point in having peers commenting on content or ideas or flow or anything like that. This is just for me to make sure that you are on the right track, right? We've chosen the discourse communities, we've done the research proposal, which should be heading in the right direction, and this is just another step for you to be going in the right direction. So that's due Sunday, April 10th. Failure to submit this first rough draft will result in only a 2% deduction from your overall project grade. I really do want you to attempt to hand something in. Something is better than nothing, right? You don't want to get a 0 for an assignment. And this assignment is, well, it's worth 0, but you don't want to you don't want to get a deduction for it. So here I have a section below with some tips about doing your data analysis. There are a list of questions, and this is taken from our textbook. And then tips for planning and drafting. And this is based off of the model in the CARS model in figure 3.1 in chapter 7. So CARS actually stands for creating a research something. Creating a research something. It just completely left my mind. Let's see. I'm just looking back at the text here for that. Formulating a research question. I think that's the section it's in. So creating a research space. Creating a research space. So this is the figure that I'm talking about. So this is based off of something that John Swales, once again, wrote in one of his essays. And so there are certain moves that scholars make when they're writing and researching. So the first move is to establish a territory, right? And we'll see this here. We're establishing a territory. We're beginning with a very brief literature review of an existing literature. So we're going to look at any of the articles that might be applicable for your project, what we know about discourse community, right? We know these things about discourse community. So you can bring in Swales, Wardle, Mirabelli, whoever we've read, right? And then name your niche. And if we go back here, so we have claiming centrality, right? This is all establishing a territory and then establishing a niche. What is your niche? What makes you an authority on this discourse community, right? So say that there is some kind of gap that people haven't looked at this, right? We know this, but we don't know this, or nobody has looked at this group as a discourse community. And then you're going to explain how you'll occupy that niche and describe your research methods and then discuss your findings in detail. This is something that you'll actually do more in depth as you get into the second draft and then into your final revision. So this isn't expected for this first draft, but this gives you some idea of how to go about approaching this project. And also organizing. So in our previous essays, we haven't really had the need, because they've only been about 5 or 6 pages long. We haven't really had a need for organizing and writing by using headings and subheadings, right? However, this is a longer research project, and you may have already written a research paper in one of your other classes where your instructor has indicated using section headings to help organize your research. We've definitely read pieces like that with section headings. You know, you have textbooks, those longer scholarly articles, maybe you've read some lab reports, and this is a way to help organize the information, right? So since this writing project is an ethnography, it's appropriate to divide your paper into sections. And the rhetorical purpose for that, as we were exploring genres, that you know, we have rhetorical purposes for certain things. The rhetorical purpose here is aiding your audience through your paper, right? But it can also serve as a way for you as a writer to organize your thoughts and ideas in a logical manner. And that goes back to that whole plan of attack that I want to see in this first draft, right? This, you have an organize things. So if you want to organize your outline with these suggested headings, you can do that, right? You have your introduction. There's probably going to be some kind of background or literature review. You're going to discuss your methods, methodology, or data, however you want to title that. Then a discussion or your findings. And then finally, we come to the end with your works cited or works consulted, references, bibliography, whatever citation method you use calls that list of sources that you have taken a look at, as well as having an appendix, or if you have more than one appendix, appendices, right? And this Purdue OWL Research and Citation Resources page, which I will click on and open for you. It has the 3 different, well, actually has more citation styles, but also conducting research, using research. This is all very helpful stuff. And if you come over to the sidebar, you can see the various subheadings here. Writing a literature review, searching online, you know, how essentially to do research, how to use research, paraphrasing, fair use, all sorts of fantastic stuff. And then, of course, we have APA, ML, you know, all these different citation styles. So that's a helpful page as far as formatting and stuff like that. So once again, this will be 2 to 3 pages minimum. No peer review, due Sunday, April 10th. So please make sure to take a look at this assignment page, read it in depth so that you understand the goal of the assignment, and get that to me by Sunday, April 10th. If you feel like you're falling behind or you're struggling to meet the deadlines, please, please, please communicate with me. I'm happy to meet with you. I'm happy to adjust deadlines. We have a small amount of wiggle room at the end because we do not have a final. So we have that additional week before grades are due. If you need to have that extra time, but I don't want you to think, oh, everything's great, I can wait until the end, the very end of the semester and get everything in. That just makes my job harder because I have a vacation that's planned right at the end of the semester, and I don't want to have to be grading while I should be on vacation. So I think that's it for week 13. If you have any questions, any concerns, you know how to get in touch with me. Okay, take care, everybody. Have a fantastic week. Bye-bye.